Greetings, thank you for lending an ear to the voice of the times for Saturday, February 5, 2022. Brought to you by Welcome Depot, the country's leading home improvement and construction supplies retailer. Shop conveniently 24/7 with Welcome Online Store. Just go to shop.welcome.com.ph. For today's editorial, EU is sabotaging global climate efforts. A proposed change in what can be classified as green energy by the European Union will have a disastrous consequences for global climate efforts if its greed-driven leadership is not stopped soon. On New Year's Eve, the European Commission, or EC, quietly distributed a draft proposal to EU member states to classify gas and nuclear-powered electricity generation as green energy options eligible for investment incentives. The underhand timing of the proposal's release over a holiday weekend was likely intentional, as the new taxonomy would almost completely undo what tenuous progress was made at last year's COP26 climate summit. The EC seemed to realize that proposing environmental destruction as a matter of continental policy would not be popular with the public, and so distributed the draft at a time when public attention would be elsewhere. The public has since caught up. However, the proposed changes have been met with bitter protests, and for good reason. The new rules would effectively derail what has been fairly rapid progress in transitioning to renewable energy across Europe and completely end any hope of the EU collectively achieving its emissions reduction commitments by 2030. As the EU has until now aggressively marketed itself as the benchmark for climate mitigation action as far as energy is concerned, its latest move will likely encourage other countries to similarly roll back their own efforts. Under the proposal, which would go into effect in 2023 if approved by a majority of EU member states, permits for new nuclear plants could continue to be issued until 2045, while permits for work needed to extend the life of existing nuclear plants could be issued until 2040. For gas plants, the proposal establishes a deadline of 2031 for new constructions permit and makes the non-binding stipulation that carbon emission limits should be set well below those of comparable coal plants. Under its current commitment, the EU would have to reduce emissions from gas power plants by 32 to 37% by 2030, along with replacing coal plants, in order to meet its target. Increasing gas power obviously will not accomplish that. Nuclear power is likewise not emissions-free, although it is certainly a far cleaner option. CO2 emissions from operations in most modern nuclear plants, those with either advanced reactors or the even newer third-generation EPR pressurized water reactors, range from 18.2 to 24.4 grams of CO2 per kilowatt-hour. When related emissions from fuel processing and constructions are factored in, the emissions increase to 40 to 116 GCO2 per kilowatt-hour. The bigger problem with nuclear power, as critics, most notably the Austrian government, have pointed out, is that the new rules would contravene existing EU legal definitions. Under the current taxonomy, investments and activities can only be described as sustainable if they both contribute to climate objectives and do no significant harm to other environmental objectives, including circular economy, biodiversity, and pollution reduction objectives. Nuclear waste management technology has not yet developed to the point where it satisfactorily meets the second requirement, and so has not been considered green energy in the EU, at least until now. The draft proposal will be put to a vote of all the EU member states sometime in April. EC President Ursula von der Leyen, French President Emmanuel Macron, and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz are intensely lobbying for a yes vote, as are the French nuclear industry and the Europe-wide oil industry. If they are successful, the direct consequence will be an almost certain end to any hope of curbing global temperature increase. Europe is one of the world's biggest emitters, but it will scale back its effort to cut emissions. Indirectly, the new dirtier rules in Europe will make it more difficult for developing countries to insist on policies favoring green energy solutions. It is beyond disappointing that the EU would even consider ruining its credibility and global leadership with such a proposal. We condemn it and urge EU members to reject it. And that's the editorial for Saturday, February 5, 2022. For more news and information, get a copy of the Manila Times on print, subscribe to its digital edition, or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, and listen to the Voice of the Times.